fill the air while we wait for everyone to join. We're going to start in just a couple of minutes, but I like to talk just to hear the sound of my voice. No, I'm kidding. I like to talk just to make sure that you can all hear the sound of my voice. So you know that your sound is working and you get yourselves used to Zoom. Of course, this is the time. Thank you so much for being here. And this is the time to click through the gallery view and see which of your friends actually showed up. And of course, once we officially start the Q&A, I recommend switching to speaker view. I'm going to just give it a couple more minutes. And in the meantime, there's a song that I prepared that I'm going to sing. Now, I will spare you all my song. I hope you all ate a good lunch. I hope most of you have seen the movie already. If not, I believe, I don't remember what time it's available till, but it's, I think, available probably for the next 24 hours with us. We tried to do this conversation kind of in the middle of our screening period. But we will get started in just 1 minute, and I'm really excited about this event, and thank you all for being here. I'll share in the meantime that I am coming to you live actually from the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan on 76th Street, where we have started to open some doors for our health, our Center for Health and Wellness, as well as our nursery school, who there are some members already in the building. Unfortunately, our screening room will not open for a while, so we will continue to give you wonderful films like this one throughout the next few months till we get our lives a little bit more back to normal. I think it's time for us to officially get started. So please, first of all, if you're on Zoom and have a camera, keep it on. We love seeing your living rooms, and more importantly, seeing your faces and feeling that we have a little bit of a community here. I will recommend at this point to switch to speaker view so you can see all of our speakers in the large format, and we can enjoy this conversation. I'm really excited about this. This is really a fantastic film, and I want to give a couple of thank yous. First of all, to IFC for giving us this film. This film will be released through their networks this week. I also want to give a big thank you to the Seattle Jewish Film Festival, who is partnering with us, as well as to Tamar Simon from Mean Streets, who made this all happen. And we're really excited to have here some people that you might recognize from the film. First of all, we have the director of the film here, Laura Gabbert. Say hi, Laura.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Laura, for being here with us and for such a really engaging film. I have so many questions. We also have here one of the participants in the film and the ex-pastry chef of the restaurant Danielle, Ghaya Oliveira. Ghaya, say hi. She's muted.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Has Sam joined us already? If not, Sam Bompas who you also will recognize from the film, who's a sensory magician and chef. He will be joining us live from the UK, so hopefully he'll get on soon. We'll see about that. I'll just start off with a few questions, and then we're going to open it to your questions. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and then we will call on you to, we'll unmute you and call on you to ask your questions live. So it's a great way for you to be part of this and to make this more interactive. I have a ton of questions, but I really want to open it to your questions. But before all of that, we have a very special clip. You're going to hear from Laura live in a moment, but unfortunately, since Yotam Ottolenghi couldn't make it today, he was kind enough to record a quick conversation with Laura that we will share with you right now. So enjoy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Gabbert. I'm the director of Ottolenghi and the Cakes of Versailles, and we're so happy to have you join us.
And I'm Yotam Ottolenghi, as in Ottolenghi and the Cakes of Versailles. And it's a joy to have you with us and to be watching the film. Laura and I have been working on this film for quite a while. it was a complete joy, wasn't it, Laura, to kind of go and discover first Versailles, then how we're going to translate all these amazing achievements, technological achievements at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And you were following me with a camera, which was both exciting and occasionally stressful, but I think we've got some amazing cakes there.
Yeah, there was a lot to follow because in addition to you, we had our 5 other pastry chefs that were so wonderful. And I just want to say when this idea first came to me, I jumped at it because I heard Yotam's name and I thought, yes, anything with Yotam will give it this sort of depth and beauty. And then I loved the idea, as Yotam, you were saying, this idea of the intersection of food and art, food and culture, food and history, which I feel like we were so fortunate to capture when we made this film together.
Yeah, and you followed the process of how would I put it? Me getting myself informed about a subject that I really had very little knowledge about through books and conversations with, and I think Versailles came to life through this process because we really, first of all, we went to Versailles. We literally had the palace to ourselves for a whole 3 hours, very early one morning. But also afterwards, through the conversations that I was having with the pastry chefs, with the amazing pastry chefs that made those cakes, the whole place came to a completely new life. And I thought, like in this case, as in other cases where you combine food and history, we discovered that through flavor, you can really get a particular perspective on a historical period. And this was about flavor, but it was also about the architecture of Versailles, the architectures of the cake and the architectures of the gardens of Versailles, all kind of intermingling. And in the end, it just made total sense.
Yeah, culminating in that event, which you will see on screen, where the sort of culmination of all of the pastry chefs' work come together. And then I also love, this idea, Yotam, that you really wanted to bring to it, that in a way we're sort of retelling the rise and fall of Versailles as all of the cakes are kind of demolished and eaten and destroyed at the end. Well,
I think for me, it was so clear that there is something, there is clear decadence to the whole, to the Versailles era that we know so well, but there's also a decadence that involved in making patisserie, and those two things were almost shouting at me, this connection has to be made. So the idea that you create something, bring it to a climax, and then devour it is something that reflects both Versailles, the era that has gone, and patisserie making. You make so much effort to create something so elaborate and decadent, and then it's kind of gone within a few minutes. And that's captured, I think, really well at the end of the film, how the destruction of the cakes as it parallels with the destruction of Versailles. Yeah, enjoy the film. Bake some cakes from either myself or the other pastry chefs, if you can, just to bring a little bit of the taste of Versailles into your homes.
And the film will be in select theaters and streaming on VOD on September 25th. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you. That was fun. Laura, you changed your shirts.
Yes.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and answers some of the questions, but I have many, many more. And also good to note that Yotam Ottolenghi has a new book coming out from Penguin Books, and I'm sure that will be on the coffee tables of every member of the Upper West Side, at least. I know I've seen his past books there in every house I walk into. And will keep us busy for the rest of this pandemic, I'm sure, with some great baking options. Laura, do you know more about this book that you can share?
I don't know that much. I'm eagerly awaiting a copy myself, but I've been seeing things posted on Instagram and that kind of thing. It looks great. It is a savory cookbook, though.
I think it could be pre-ordered. So for those of you who are interested in pre-ordering and checking out your local bookstores, and support local bookstores especially. So let me start, Laura, with just asking you, so how do you mentioned briefly, but how did this all come about for you?
Yeah, so this is a project I didn't develop myself. It was brought to me in sort of a loose form. Original Productions, Steve Robillard, who worked at Original Productions and is a producer on the film, had been talking to Yotam, and they really wanted to work on something together. And Yotam had been doing these collaborations with the Met, and this Versailles show was coming up in the summer of 2018, and it just felt like this would be a very cinematic event to actually capture. So Steve brought the project to me and asked me if I was interested in directing, and I talked to Yotam, and we decided that it was really a fit between the two of us creatively. And that was probably in March of 2018. So we spent the next few months just sort of developing the idea and sort of figuring out the logistics of it, and the budget and everything else that you do prior to making a film. But we had we knew that we were going to capture the event, but the trick was, how do we, with a limited budget, because documentaries do not have huge budgets, how do we kind of follow these other chefs that Yotam was so excited to invite? So we spent a lot of time just on the phone kind of talking about this. And once it started, we actually shot the event first and the sort of ramp up to the event, and then went back to kind of London and Versailles and filled in those pieces. So it was interesting, and in a way we had to kind of take, because Yotam had been studying and researching all of this, and researching different pastry chefs for a while before. So we kind of had to go back and kind of almost recreate all of that research and his process a little bit. So there are many pieces to weave together, but we were able to do it. And it was really exciting once we started meeting the actual chefs themselves.
This is fabulous. One of the things that I really loved about the film is the structure of it. I don't know at what point you chose that structure, but I see the way you shot it actually can lend itself to that structure, that we had this anticipation towards the event throughout the whole film. And of course, we were then, teased by getting that background as the suspense built towards the final event, which all came together.
One of the things that I thought was, one of the things I really wanted to capture was that, as Yotam says in that introduction, he didn't know much about the history of Versailles and the history of pastry. So for him, it truly was this opportunity to learn something he was really excited about. And I really and he has such a curious kind of fertile mind. We really wanted to capture his learning, and you get a lot of that through his conversations with the food historian Deborah Crone in the film, which I really love those pieces, because they're really just in conversation, sharing their knowledge. And as he says in the film, she really was a teacher to him, and helping him really kind of tap into what were the flavors then, what were the ingredients, and how did pastry sort of fit into the overall, Versailles world. And then that, plus with the exhibition at the Met, Visitors to Versailles, and kind of weaving that in, and Yotam kind of connecting those dots historically too. It made for a rich palette once we're in the editing room.
And I'll also add that, of course, it just, as this film should, it looks beautiful. Every element is captured in that beautiful way that I think is very fitting to the themes. I want to bring Ghaya into this as well, and Ghaya, ask you a little bit about, okay, so when, from your perspective, getting that golden ticket or that email, or however you got into it, tell us how it all started for you and your feelings from behind the scenes.
Yeah, of course. I received actually an email from Yotam, and I was like surprised to see an email coming up from him. It was our first time ever way to connect. And his email talking about this Versailles idea. And as soon as I seen the word of Versailles in that email, my head started like spinning everywhere. I was like, Versailles, pastry. Hold on a second, there's so much to do here. It was super exciting. After that, we chat on the phone, and he was explaining the idea behind all of this. And I was like, okay, I gotta start. I need to start right now. I was like super excited. It was like really a great way to work, to do pastry around this theme. I always loved to work around themes, stories. Most of my desserts are created with story behind them. So Versailles was really big, and it was a great opportunity. So yeah.
I have to say, one of the things I love so much about this movie is, as a programmer, someone who works in a community center that looks for ways to bring the community together in interactive ways. I give so much credit to the Met for creating not only an exhibit, but then thinking about, okay, here's another interactive way of highlighting the themes of the exhibit and bringing this back to their audience in a whole new way. I'd love to hear from you a little bit about that process of working with the Met.
Of course.
Yeah.
So after that email and chat, it was like, Yotam was like, Ghaya, we're gonna do this at the Met, and this is another thing going on behind that. We're gonna film all of this. So to me, doing something at the Met, presenting my desserts team at the Met, was already something big. Because pastry, it's art, and I thought it was like it was the perfect spot to place to represent them. I mean, it was a one lifetime opportunity to present your desserts at the Metropolitan Museum of New York. It is big and a lot of honor to me, really, to do that.
Laura, let me ask you, because it was nice to be able to see, we as people who do not work at the Met, we don't get to see kind of the backside and the operations of the Met, and that was kind of interesting. Was that something that was difficult to maneuver to really get behind the scenes there?
Yes and no. I mean, I agree that for me, it was a thrill. Like, the biggest thrill of filming at the Met was to sort of be behind the scenes. Like, what do the kitchens look like? What does the basement look like? What are all those, the bowels of the Met where everything's stored? And it was, and I felt like that was important to show in the film, to see that there was this sort of complicated logistics behind it all. What they do when you film at the Met is that you have you have staff from the live arts department basically with you all the time. So literally, like, if we were shooting in a gallery, there was always someone behind me in case I got too close to art and I feel a hand on my shoulder. So they're, of course, this is what they have to do, and the cameras have to be Met approved and all of those things. And there are certainly places where you cannot film at all in the Met. But yeah, I thought that was sort of the fun of it. And I also think it's interesting because it's almost like the Met, it kind of echoes Versailles, right? In terms of just being this labyrinth. So it was both challenging, but also really thrilling to film there. And we even got to spend, like Versailles, we got to spend a few hours just by ourselves when the Met was closed, just filming the art, which was a total treat.
Now, wait a minute. You dropped something here for a moment. You mentioned that there are areas of the Met that you couldn't access. Which areas are those?
They're just, where they store art, basically. So there's certain hallways and corridors down in the basement where they don't let cameras through, just for security reasons. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So we always had someone from the Met staff with us, kind of telling us where we could go and where we couldn't, and bringing us through a different hallway that would lead us to where we needed to go. So logistically, just from a production standpoint, it was complicated. We couldn't just, run around, which makes sense.
Did they check your pockets before you left, all the camera equipment, make sure you're not hiding any masterpieces inside your bags? Ghaya, how about for you? The work going like behind the scenes in the Met, did it live up? Is there a kitchen up to standard?
Well, almost similar. I mean, I didn't film anything, but I had a chocolate showpiece that I need to find a safe place for it. And it was a little complicated to give me a space for it. Not complicated, but somebody has to walk with me the whole time. We're looking like, oh, maybe here, like, it was hard, not hard, but it was difficult really to, I was afraid for the showpiece because we worked on it for a couple of weeks, was intensive work into it. And I was afraid to leave it in a spot and come back and piece fell off or somebody passed by it and hit it or chip it or something. But every time we moved around, for sure, there was a lot of security around you and making sure you don't go to a lot of places, but the specific places you need to be in. Kitchen space wise, not really, obviously. I mean, I didn't need much for space of a kitchen. I had to, well, pastry chef, you never have enough space to work. It's always like that. I mean, it's known. It's always a small pastry department that you have. So we know already how to manage small spaces, and we know how to work in a very small areas. So for me, it wasn't a big challenge to do that, but my most worried was about where can I store the showpiece, the chocolate showpiece, yeah.
And I've just been notified that Sam Bompas is here with us too. Sam.
Hello, hello everyone. I'm very, very sorry I'm late, and welcome to my studio as well here. So I'm in front of a 6.5 meter cocktail organ, but lovely to see you all.
Thank you. We all have these in our background, as you can see. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about your kind of like first reactions, how when you were asked, and how it came about for you?
Well, I mean, Yotam's always been a great hero of mine. I mean, and the Met is an extraordinary place. So we're very quick to say yes. And then we saw the caliber of the other people who are involved, which was remarkably intimidating, because we come at this not as professionals in the kitchen, but rather sort of outsider enthusiasts. And so then it was then after having committed, we're like, oh my gosh, there's no way out of this. We're really going to have to try very, very hard, even to sit at the table. But it was a remarkably fun project to work on.
And just to share with our audiences here, I hope most of you have seen the film already, but if you haven't and don't really know about Sam's work, you define yourself as a sensory magician. Is that correct?
I don't think I've ever defined myself as that. I hope that people would have a sensorially magical time when they come to our project, and they would define ourselves as that. We talk about ourselves in terms of studio as experience designers. You know, and that's really to differentiate ourselves from people who'd work as artists, because artists, it's about the work, whereas with an experience designer, it's about your apprehension of the work. And I think when it comes to food and drink, it really has to be down to your very own enjoyment, doesn't it? That's the thing that's crucial at the end of the day.
So let me ask, this really goes now to the three of you. One of the most profound elements of the film is, of course, towards the end, and I think, Laura, you hinted to this a little bit more, also as far as the Met's comparison to Versailles and just the elaborate lives that we live, and I felt there was a little bit of a political statement there towards the end that was subtle but profound regarding our world today. And I'll admit that as I was sitting, I was mentioning earlier, I had seen this when I originally watched it. I watched it with some friends who felt that they were a little disturbed by the world of Versailles, of course, as much as it's celebrated and beautiful, that of course there's one could question, how obviously there was a reason for its fall, and there's criticism of it that might be very relevant to our society today. Laura, let me start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just as we were making the film, and Yotam and I were brushing up on our French history, and looking at even the exhibit, the Visitors of Versailles tells the story of the rise and the fall. So by the time you get to the end of that exhibit, you're seeing the gardens of Versailles being torn apart and destroyed. It felt like we had this opportunity to tell a similar story the sort of the creation of this event, and with it sort of culminating in everything being eaten and destroyed. And then also there's this, you know, the interesting thing that Deborah Crone talks about in the film, the food historian, is that, you know, food and pastry and dessert during the time of Versailles was really, it was done to sort of show people mastery over nature, mastery over, you know, technology. The gardens were the same at the Met. And that was to basically promote the French monarchy, you know? And, but what that also did was just point out the disparity in the haves and the haves not, right? So while that was happening, there were, you know, women in Paris unable to buy flour. And the actual storyline of Versailles, just sort of spelling that out in the film and then sort of matching it with, you know, the arc of the actual event, it just can't help but resonate with kind of how we feel about sort of the excesses of our society today, I think. And that, you know, some of us feel that we are sort of on the brink of something revolutionary. So, and it's interesting, you know, we filmed it in the summer of 2018, and I feel like some of those things just resonate more today. So yeah, it sort of, that story sort of naturally told itself a little bit in the film, but we certainly, you know, cinematically tried to heighten that a little bit.
Absolutely. Ghaya, what are your thoughts?
Well, let's say, I mean, if you're making the desserts, you have to be very creative, beautiful, but what's the end of it? Obviously, you're gonna have to eat it, right? Versailles, I'm not gonna lie, I've been too many times to Paris. I never got the chance to visit Versailles. I'll explain why. As I said, I'm a pastry chef, and of course, Paris is the spot to be at if you wanna taste the beautiful pastries and have more knowledge about pastries and taste different creations. So every time I had the chance to go to Paris, my only destination were the pastry shops. That's the only thing I know, and that's the only thing I see. Anything else, it didn't really matter that much to me. It is, I mean, you have to understand it. I mean, pastry chef, I mean, we live for that. It's super important. And the idea about Versailles, the way that I looked at it, I think I wanted to see more what's around it, the story of that building over there, the soil, the gardens around it, the history of the area itself. So I wanted to represent more the live part of it, which is, I thought the garden was very important because it's green. And the stories are more, they say, how they say the story, I don't know the expression exactly when they say the walls has ears, how to say that? The walls? Yeah. So I wanted to build walls when I made the showpiece. So I thought the walls of Versailles were very important to me. So that will give history a little bit, an understanding to the piece that I built. So I wanted to focus more on that because I thought it gives more story and attention to it. Yeah, that's my view really about Versailles. It's mainly the pieces, the arts inside. It's not something you can reproduce in any other way. It's beautiful, but I thought mainly the outside, the green part of it was more important than anything.
Thank you. Sam, how about for you? First of all, tell us a little bit more about your kind of philosophy towards your creation, but then also I'd like to hear your thoughts on this question of Versailles and our world today.
Right. Okay. we make very fancy Jello effectively, or that's what we're doing. I think there is something ineffably frivolous, but also joyful about it. You know, we've spent years putting it. You put it on the table, and everyone's face lights up. It brings back memories, nostalgia, tales to tell and be shared. You know, and I think joyfulness, even at very, very serious times, is really crucial too. And I don't have a problem with that. It's important to smile as well. I think looking at parallels between sort of Versailles and today, and obviously there's incredible inequality in Versailles, which led to the demise of the French monarchy, or was one of the reasons. You know, and of course we're seeing a world in which there's increasing inequality and increasing discourse around it today. You know, but you're seeing a lot of the cultural institutions. So we're working with all of the cultural institutions in the UK, which you know, are having a really, really tough time. Their funding's hemorrhaging, their visitorship is hemorrhaging, and at the same time they're being very, very heavily critiqued. You know, for their perhaps inaccessibility, being very elitist, but it's a complex. You know, having been on the inside, not just of the Met, but of a lot of the major cultural institutions in the UK, you know that it is a very complex story, and I'm sure, as he teased out, there are a lot of myths around Versailles and sort of let them eat cake and all of that. There is perhaps a more complex story than the one that we look at you know, centuries distance, and I'm sure a much simpler story will be told in years to come of what everyone on this call is experiencing in some way, for better or worse.
And that's, I mean, I think you're all touching on this a little bit, and I'm finding it like, I think actually the film resonates even more during this period, during this pandemic. Watching this film and seeing the Met, which is like, you know, in our backyard here across the park, is, you know, something that we're all longing for, to have that normal world where we can be over the top with kind of the exhibits and the appreciation of art. And at the same time, of course, we're living, it's I think even pointed out even more in our world today, you know, the wealth disparity that exists across the world, but specifically here in America, and to have such wealth and such decadence, as some have put it, at the same time when there's such poverty. And then to see this now, when we have actually, when I think we're going through a little bit of a revolution here, I think it just makes a huge statement on to our society, and it makes this film extremely important right now. You're all welcome to comment. There's no direct question there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that it was interesting for me, having finished making the film quite a while ago, to go back and watch it. And I do think, you know, that the questions you raise or the points you make they just do resonate a little bit more even than 2 years ago. But when we were making the film, that was very much in the conversation then too. Yeah, and you know, I think that it was one of the things that Yotam and I talked about really early on in the making of the film, that we had to tell that piece of the story, that we couldn't ignore that piece of the story. The parallels were just too striking.
And I think it's interesting you're talking about the term decadence. We've literally just finished a project called DIY Decadence, which is just with some of our audiences, it's trying to find wonderful decadent moments, even with whatever rubbish is left in the back of your store cupboard at this duration, and find moments of how you can craft moments of pleasure with it. And it can just be sort of water from the tap that you're holding up to the sunlight glancing in through your window, and really celebrating that in the midst of whatever else is going on for you, whoever the people are that you can't see, whatever the opportunities are that you may or may not have had.
That's interesting, because it's like in a way, being, you know, in quarantine, you do have to redefine that, right? And find, like you're saying, those moments of joy and beauty in the simpler things.
Yeah, exactly, and of course there is that moment of decadence. Decadence is complex. Shouldn't you be helping change the world for the better instead of sitting there admiring the sunlight scintillating off the top of your glass of water? But I think it's so important too as well, and moments of joyfulness are absolutely crucial to humanity. It's not a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it should be.
Yeah.
Ghaya, did you want to add to this?
Well, it's kind of yes and no, really. It's, well, not really. No, I apologize.
No
Sorry.
problem. I want to give an opportunity. I know we have a lot of questions from the audience, and I want to give an opportunity for the audience to ask their questions live. I'm going to ask one last question. Folks, if you have more questions, of course, put them in the chat box, and then we'll contact you and open your mics. If just be aware that we're going to try to reach you so you can open your mics and ask your question live. But while we're talking about where we are during this COVID-19 pandemic, tell us a little bit about how this has affected your work, and of course, we're eager to hear of the food world in general, how this is all impacting, and what you've been doing with yourselves during these last few months. Ghaya, would you like to start? I know you have exciting news to share.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess like everybody else, I had to stay home for a few months, which is, I keep telling to some friends, hearing what they're up to, what's going on after 3 months. I think we agree that it was a great therapy for us, from the people from my industry anyway, like the food industry. It was a good therapy time. I think when it's a chance for us to rest and understand what's next for us, for me anyway. So I've been in the industry, I've been a pastry chef for 20 years. And it's time for me to realize my dream, I guess, right? Any other pastry chef wanted to open their own place, open their own pastry shop or something like that, I guess. So I decided while I'm staying home to do a lot of work. I've been doing a lot of webinar about new businesses, how to start a new business, I guess. It was great. So I'm in the process to open new, like an all-day cafe here in New York, and I'm super excited about it. And of course, it's going to be some pastry, delicate pastry, the different way that I see the pastry actually, and some cooking, of course, because I'm originated from Tunisia. So I really want to introduce some Tunisian cooking too. But these are not big dishes, very small tastes of back home. No, that was my plan. This is what I've been working on, and can't wait.
I can't wait to go there and taste.
Yes.
To invite us to the opening.
Of course.
Laura, what have you been doing?
I have a lot of my sort of, because I do commercial work on the side, so that really dried up right away, in late March, early April. But I, became aware right away, as we all did, that restaurants were really some of the first casualties of the pandemic. I basically started working on a project with Ruth Reichel, the former editor of Gourmet magazine, because we were both seeing what was happening, and we decided to collaborate on a project about the impact of COVID on the whole food supply chain, not a small topic. So since April, we've been doing a lot of remote shooting on Zoom with restaurants, restaurant owners, chefs, restaurant workers, farmers, ranchers, fishermen, and doing some safe shooting in the field, just to sort of really kind of bear witness to what's happened. Because, with so many things, COVID has really kind of highlighted or amplified what's broken, in our food supply chain and in the landscape itself. So So I've been working on that quite a bit. It's been really, really, really interesting. And, you know, we're probably a third of the way through production. So we'll be working on it for at least another year, year and a half.
I look forward to hearing the updates and seeing more of it.
Thank you.
Sam, you've shared a little bit about some interesting things you're doing. How else have you been impacted? How has this pandemic impacted you?
Well, I got to say, right now I'm just feeling hungry at the sound of the Tunisian cuisine. It's coming up to this time for me, and yeah, that sounds marvelous. You know, as with everyone, trying to see what opportunities there are that are thrown up by it. So very, very challenging in terms of F&B with lots of our colleagues, but at the same time, there are just the most extraordinary opportunities as a consequence. I guess I'm lucky. I'm over in London, so it's not, we don't have the best track record with COVID, but it's a little bit more open than many of you who are probably in the States at the moment. But it means that, you know, right at the start, before we locked down in March, we put together a hand sanitizer design competition, and the purpose of that was really to get people safely, well, keep people at the time is keep people safely in the public realm and look at the impact that good design can have. And I was going into all these luxury restaurants, and they'd have a crappy sort of off-the-shelf store-bought hand pump on the top, and I was like, oh, it's really incongruous. But you know, that very quickly turned into you know, global competition that had a reach of about 400 million, and then as soon as we came out of lockdown, that turned into an exhibition that we hosted at the Design Museum here in London, that I think 12,000 people have been through, and that'll ship out now to Hong Kong, and then it's going to tour to Australia. And I never thought spend so much attention with the hand sanitizer pump. And of course, that's not only looking at luxury, but it's also looking at industrial design. It's looking at ways you can engage children. And there's even a category for cadet and young designers. For I know that many parents have been at home entertaining kids relentlessly for months and months now. So hopefully it bought them 3 minutes of respite, with another thing to do. But it's you know, it's not directly food and drink, but the entire purpose of that is to create scenarios where, the things that I love doing are where people get together in a public place and look at some art, or they have a meal together. And hopefully this is just to ease improve both the safety of that, but also the perception of people's safety as well. And we've been working with Oxford University in terms of what the science that sits behind that is.
I love that. We definitely could use that here in New York. I think, you know, a little upgrade to our hand sanitizers. And I'm surprised you didn't turn it into some sort of drink too. It could get interesting. There'll be alcohol there.
Well,
Hand sanitizer.
Well, we did have a lot of the big drinks brands who are lining up to do the big launch, because of course a lot of them very early on were putting their production lines into creating sanitizer. Unfortunately, it was looking like I was going to have to do a launch event with 6 people, which it just wasn't going to cut it. You can't have a party, and we're going to try and do some fundraising for the International Red Cross through it as well. We've actually raised a lot of cash through it. But yeah, I think the auction with 6 people bidding against each other would have been a somewhat sorry result for the International Red Cross. So we focused our fundraising efforts for them in other means.
Nice. We have some questions from the audience, but I just want to take this moment to remind people to tell their friends about this film. This is a film that's going to be released by IFC this week, and we have it accessible for the next couple of days. This conversation will be also, it's being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel. So please do tell your friends, share with your friends, and it's, I think, especially now, an extremely important film. We're going to take our first question from Leslie Montrell. You're on.
Hi there. Thank you for the opportunity. Firstly, I want to say it was a fabulous movie. We loved it. We loved the sumptuousness of it. We loved the way you told the story. It was fabulous. Several questions. Was each dessert supposed to serve everyone who was there? How many people were there? and how were they chosen to be there? Thank you so much.
Sure. Maybe Ghaya and Sam can help me with this, but I do believe their part of your instruction was to have enough to serve out to everyone there. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
No. And I think there were
yeah.
150 to 200 people there.
Yeah.
Is that right, guys?
I mean, I had to cut back when I turned up. So I ordered all the ingredients in from London. I turned up in the catering kitchen and there was a pallet of ingredients. There was literally almost a meter squared of ingredients. That was to feed those numbers of people. So I was like, oh, chef, I'm only going to use a fraction of this. I'm really hoping that you've got a sale or return policy on it, and happy that we're able to. It was all long life because I was using a lot of alcohol. So it was well used.
I just remember Sam and his team just dumping bottle after bottle into your whirlpool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I can say something about this. I know when Yotam told me about the desserts for this event. So obviously in my hand, I was like, ooh, we're gonna do this, this, and this. So I had like probably 6 or 8 choices of desserts. So when I explained to Yotam what I was gonna do, and he was like, hold on there, Ghaya, you just need to do 1 dessert. So I was like, I cannot do that. There's so much to express and there's so much to create. So I really need to present these different desserts. And I know for sure that there was for each desserts, which at the end, I think I made 4 maybe or 5, four of the desserts. I know for every time we did an event, like offsite event, let's say, there's always like savory and sweet in these events. And when you do sweets, you always reduce the numbers of the sweet because you know people, they're gonna eat a lot of savory out there. People are gonna be like drinking a lot and getting these little bites of savories. But sweets, it's always like 1 bite at the end. But this event was only for pastry. So you should expect that people, they're gonna jump on that. Like I've seen people coming back over and over getting the same desserts like 2 or 3 times. I do remember that very well. But
just 2 or 3? Just 2 or 3?
Truly, like at a certain time, I was like looking to my sous chef. I was like, I hope we have enough. It was good. It was great. Yeah.
Here at the JCC, when we have events after some of our films and other programs, and we have receptions, people show up with little Ziploc bags and sometimes place things in. Any of that going on there?
Sometimes.
Well, I've got to say, there was so much pastry happening as well. You felt the energy increasing and increasing across the end of the event. And the whole room felt like the sculpture court felt like it was going to take off. There's so much energy at the end. It
was great.
Buzzing.
And Leslie also asked, how did the people who were there, how were they chosen to be there?
So I think that it was a combination, but you could actually buy tickets for the event. It was open to Met members, but of course they saved a certain number of tickets for, I think Met board members and VIPs, but you could literally just go online and buy a ticket to it. And before, you see a little bit of it in the film, but there was this really wonderful lecture in the beginning with Yotam and Deborah Crone and Daniela, the curator at the Met. So they sort of set the scene of Versailles and pastry and the history of pastry, and then they kind of let everyone loose into the beautiful pastry presentations.
Let loose. Yes, I love that. We have a question now from June Jacobs. June, you're on.
Okay, I wanted to know, are the recipes for the desserts available? And if so, where?
Oh, that is such a good question. I don't think they are, but we could work on that. I mean, no, they're not available, and I'm sorry that they're not.
Gene, I've definitely written it, so I can circulate this off. I can circulate that after this.
Great, Sam. That'd be great. Yeah.
I mean, I should say that The recipes that the other pastry chefs were doing, from the look of them, I'd be incredibly intimidated to even
Don't try this
start.
at home. You have the warning.
I think
Don't
ours
try
had
this at
3
home.
ingredients because I'm an amateur enthusiast, so it's what I could manage.
Thank you. We have a question from Nechi. Did I get that right? Nechi, you're on the air?
Nechi.
Nechi, sorry.
The Israeli chet.
I'm sorry, Nechi.
So I love the film, and I want to add my voice to ask for the recipes. And I am really excited about Ghaya's new place. And I wanted to ask, what, if you let Versailles guide you in the choice of the ingredients you both used for your desserts?
Great question.
Well, we did a lot of, I did a lot of research, of course, before getting into creating these desserts for Versailles. It's not only the look. I know each dessert represented something, represented a part of the landscaping or the walls or the ladies in Versailles. But also I wanted to make sure that the flavors are some of them really. Was a lot of almond used back then, was a lot of sugar used, was a lot of dried fruits, like things that could be preserved longer back then in the day, that time. So I wanted to really incorporate ingredients like that. And to me, it was very important. As I said, I really like to work with themes and stories. So I do a lot of research before creating desserts. So I want to make sure, like, really there's a big marriage between the origins and the what I'm gonna make right now. So flavors are important. The aspect is very important too. And also, since everything back then was too sweet, so I needed to cut off a lot of that sugar too. So it was very important also.
Yeah, I think we start off with the research process, but of course the thing is that you know, our expertise is really in jello and jellies, which there weren't really a lot of at Versailles in any meaningful way. Not least because you know, this is a time when you know, Britain and France were historic and ancient enemies, and Britain at the time, and indeed until very recently, didn't have a very good reputation for food and drink. A lot of the innovation being driven from France, but indeed a lot of the court chefs in England also originating from France. But there were 2 things alone that the British were said to have the edge on over the French. One of them was roasting meats. And if you're a history of food enthusiast and you want to go right to the source, look at historicfood.com, which is run by Ivan Day. He's like the Indiana Jones of the pastry world, and he'll swing into pantries and then start looking at how a lot of the materials are used. The second, though, and this is something I learnt at the knee of Ivan Day himself in Historic Food, was the Brits at the time were good at jellies and had a long and glorious history. So slightly sort of insidiously getting them in there to serve our own a nefarious jelly-based purpose. The good thing about jelly, though, is it's really just a texture. So you can have any flavor to it that you like. If you can make a great cocktail or a fruit mixture that you like, you can turn that into a jelly, unless it's pineapple, which is the sort of enemy of arch enemy of all the jellies. But so the ingredients we're using were all French ingredients. So liqueur de violet, champagnes, French raspberries, I guess.
We're going to take one last question from Gail. Gail Shemin.
Hi, I just want to say that I enjoyed that film immensely, and I was awestruck by all of the processes that were used to create these fabulous looking desserts. My question was, though, that large, and it's probably for Sam, that large tub that you blew into these tubes, what was that? What was the purpose of that huge transparent tub and blowing into tubes? What was that for? I'm sorry.
Gail, that is a very, very good question. So, and it starts out that whenever we do something, we like to really push ourselves and try and do something that is challenging for us because it makes life interesting. It develops our practice. And when we're looking at Versailles was very, very well known for its extraordinary fountains. And yeah, it still has an incredible network of fountains. But you know, they're real sort of mechanical wonders of the age. And so we thought, could we take that fountain technology and use it to make a fountain within the Met's sculpture court? And we actually had something that's used in food, which is a peristaltic pump. So it's a pump that can be food safe in terms of running food through it. It is one of the most sexy bits of equipment that we own. And we thought we could use that to turn into a cocktail whirlpool, which would aerate the cocktail, and also because it was decadence, we had lots of glitter in it, so it'd shimmer. It'd aerate the cocktail and keep that all in suspension as it was pumping round as a whirlpool. The main challenge was, obviously, we built it, we tested it here, all with different power specs than we're going to find in the Met. So I would say, when filming it, that was definitely the most nervous I was all of the year, in the entire year, when I thought we're fusing the power of the Met. And then we had an exciting race against time, racing all over New York, trying to get all the right bits of equipment to make this absurd and wonderful cocktail whirlpool work. And we got it working just in time. I was fist pumping the air. It was I don't know if it translated to any of the guests as a triumph, but personally, I felt it was a great personal victory over the pump. But hopefully that goes some way to explain what on earth was going on as the nervous curators stood around as they saw this sort of spurting pump beneath their priceless tapestries. I'm going, it's going to be fine. They were very brave.
Thank you all, by the way, for your questions, and thank you for being a part of this wonderful event. Before we end, I want to remind people, of course, again, spread the word about this film, tell your friends. This weekend, we have a very special event on Yom Kippur. We have a Forgive Me Filmathon, which is it's going to be a virtual event where people like me who feel more comfortable in the cinema and see cinemas as a temple and see movies as a way to reflect on who we are and make our society a better place, which are some of the messages of Yom Kippur. We will be having a special program just for you, 4 to 5 p.m. on Monday, which is Yom Kippur. And we're making these films available for free throughout the 24 hours. So check that out. Next week, we have another film from IFC called A Call to Spy. And another big thank you to Tamar Simon and Mean Streets for making this film possible for us. Our October films are already up online and much more to come. This season, we're also going to be hosting our Other Israel Film Festival virtually in December, and many exciting films on their way. So please join us and do tell your friends. I want to give a huge thank you, first of all. And as I thank you, tell us how people can learn more about you, website, Twitter, how you are best followed. But Laura Gabbert, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone watching the film and your wonderful questions. And Ghaya and Sam, it's so great to see you guys. Thanks for joining.
You too, Laura.
Yeah. Laura Gabbert Films on Instagram and Laura Gabbert at Laura Gabbert 1 on Twitter, but I'm not a huge presence on social media.
Okay.
We'll get them the information. Ghaya, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great, really. Thank you.
What's the name of your restaurant? That's
Oh, it's Ghaya. Very simple.
I like it.
It's me, Ghaya.
And Sam, thank you. Thank you for coming live all the way from the UK. Where can people learn more?
So thank you everyone who's joined here. You can find out our stuff at bompsandpa.com. And it's just a joy and very spirited questions. So Isaac, thank you very much and lovely to see everyone.
Thank you all for joining us. Please stay safe, everyone. We look forward to seeing you all in person sometime soon. Until then, we'll see you here and virtually and at the movies. Take care.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.